Titus, deep breath. I can English.
Sure.
So let's start with Miss Bartello's focus question thing, which says, focus on the last 3 pages of chapter 1. In the paragraph that begins, already it was deep summer, Fitzgerald shifts the mood. Discuss how he accomplishes this shift with his diction, syntax, and other elements. Who would like to start?
Oh, Amanda, do you want to start? Go.
No, I do not.
Go, Monique, go.
I said me.
Oh,
okay, Nathan, you want to start?
I want to make a racist comment.
Yes, I want to start.
Okay, start.
So before this particular section, the story of the book, book is just describing Nick's early life and how he ended up on West Egg. And in that chapter, I think it's on page 20, is it? I actually took out a quote that one thing he does is he shifts the tone by using words like, he describes the night as loud and bright with wings beating the trees and a persistent organ sound full of the bellow at the earth, which is basically, he's changing it from he's changing it into more of a fantasy type of tone, because it's sort of like what was it? It's sort of like what was it?
Oh, hey Nathan, I think I get what you're saying. If you want help.
Yes, please. I can't think of the word.
You came up with the same thing I did. That I said that he went from being like really literal about things and using like this is this, and then he went to being more figurative. Like I looked at that last sentence with like the unquiet darkness. It's not like the stuff he's saying isn't as literal anymore. It's more figurative-ish. Fun times. Hi, someone help.
Okay, give me a sec. So can you repeat that one?
Oh, I said he went from using more literal language to adding in some more figurative language.
I didn't completely unplug my plug for 1 sec.
Oh, Amanda.
Completely unplugged it. Oh my
I also
goodness.
want to note, while Amanda's dying over there, that I feel as though the tone went from being just like kind of neutral-ish to going into a little bit darker, and for the rest of the book being that it seems like it's going to be happy and good, but in reality it's not, and it's not actually as good as it seems. And I think these last couple of pages,
and it's like a stark contrast to how it's like media and other literature typically displays like the 1920s, because it's like we're typically shown the 1920s as the roaring 20s. Everybody's happy, everybody's having fun. But Fitzgerald decided to go like the route of like the darker tones of the 20s, like explaining stuff like isolation. I don't know where I'm going with this, but it's
I think what you're... Sorry, am I cutting you off?
Wait, I got it. Because it's like, okay, Nick is kind of isolated, because it's like on page. Where did I put it? Well, yeah, anyway, because at one point, Nick makes like an offhanded comment along the lines of, can we actually talk about something real? Because it's like he makes a remark how dinner time isn't quite like how it is in the West, where it's like at the West they kind of sit down and actually like have a meaningful conversation, while in the East it's really superficial and he doesn't feel at home. So that kind of like gives you like that isolated feeling. And then at the end of chapter 1, that isolated feeling is like ramped up when Fitzgerald starts describing the surroundings around Nick. And I'm going to shift it over to when Gatsby appears. It's like, he sees Gatsby. He turns away for like 2 seconds. Gatsby's gone. That's got to mean something.
Oh, I have something for that. Similar to how, like, with Tale of Two Cities, how Lucy was the light, Gatsby has this sort of... I got the sense from Gatsby that he's, like, has this unconditional hopefulness in his eyes. And it's like... Fitzgerald is like saying that if you look away for like even a second, that hopefulness that you had will disappear completely. Like how? Oh, you can go.
I was gonna say, I feel like instead of him actually being like this bright light, I feel like it goes with this idea of like people having like a reputation and like a way that people see them, because people see him as like this guy who's like full of life and is like this bright dude, and he's hosting these like great parties and he's like really cool, and hopeful and all of that, and that's how people see him, even though he may or may not be like that. Cool. Bye.
Okay. So, does anybody have any other comments for
I do.
the shift? Or should we
Nobody
move
can
on
go.
and hit the shift
Yeah, Nico said
again
I
later?
hear.
Okay, go ahead.
Basically, in the beginning, where you can see Nick's dialogue, as Lauren said, it was more literal. But as you get further on to the paragraph, well, to the last page, the last 2 pages, like Bartella was saying, RD and Deep Summer, you can see a lot of color symbolism just in there, just in that one section, which gives way to it being more figurative and having more complexity there to what he said. So you can possibly like make the inclination that he might become more complex, as will the other characters, as the story goes on.
Okay, I
They
see what you
might
mean.
care less about their reputation and start to think about real things possibly and have that same awakening that he is early on.
Okay, did anybody mention, like, the stark drop of first-person pronouns towards the ending of Chapter 1?
No, nobody has.
No.
Okay, and I'm
No,
gonna
no.
swoop in with that to keep this discussion going.
Go for it.
So, like, throughout Chapter 1, there's like heavy usage of first-person pronouns because it's like Nick focuses his, like, this part of the chat, like the beginning part of the chapter, a lot on him and talks about his thoughts, his feelings. But then after, let's see, after the whole, it was Deep Summer on Roadhouse Roofs, blah, 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 on page 20. That's when Nick shifts into talking more about what's going on around him instead of his, like, own thoughts and feelings. Because it's like, and that's evidenced by the other chapters in Chapter 2 and Chapter 3 when it's more, he talks about what's going on around him instead of just his personal feelings. So, for example, in Chapter 2, it focuses on Tom and his, affair with Myrtle, and, like, that's Nick just seeing that. He doesn't really, like, discuss his own, like, kind of thoughts and feelings on it. He's more just kind of an observer. That makes sense?
Yeah, I think that goes with
So-
I think that goes with the whole thing of this is Nick writing a book about the stuff with him and Gatsby and his time in West Egg, because he starts off this thing that he's writing with explaining enough about himself that we understand him and his place in the story, and then he goes from talking about the background of himself to the actual story itself and meeting Gatsby and all of that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So when you're allowed to talk, you can all shut up. All right. Okay. So my voice is really deep. I can hear this. Is weird. All right. So I'm going to talk very specifically about all of this jazz. Okay.
Like jazz.
The last little,
Getting more into it.
I don't even know, it's got a little snippet of a paragraph from, like, the very last page of Chapter 1. You're talking about how, like, he stops, talking about his inner feelings. But I also kind of want to point out, like, it seems like almost like he distances himself from the actual story too. He kind of, like, he talks about, like, the green light that's very far away, which we're not going to talk about yet because, it's a mysterious green light. We have no idea what it is, obviously, because it's not in Chapter 1. And then, all that fun stuff. And then, he's like the unquiet darkness, which is kind of like an oxymoron. That's the right word. Sure, right? Yeah, no one's yelling at me, so yes. So yeah, it kind of, like, distances himself. What you saying there, Mom?
An oxymoron would be two opposite things.
Yeah, honey,
dark-
it's not an
Like alone
oxymoron.
together?
Necessarily
An
opposite.
unquiet darkness. Darkness is supposed to be quiet.
Hold on.
That's
light-
not necessarily.
We don't
No,
need to sit and talk
it is
about
an
this.
oxymoron.
No.
This is more
Like loud
personification,
silence.
honey.
No, I think no, hold on, I got this. I can fix it. I think maybe what he was saying was that those last words and all, like, the unquiet darkness thing, helped with establishing the tone because they're darker and they make it less happy. If we're agreeing that the tone is being brought down to a not as happy level, saying
And that's
stuff
what
like the
Bartolo says.
unquiet darkness adds to that. Did I help?
Okay, so we're at the 20-minute mark. We have discussed Bartella's question for 10 minutes. We should probably move on.
Okay.
I don't know why.
Alright.
All right. So do we want to keep this in Chapter 1, or are we just going to bring up points?
I mean,
Hang up
I
points.
got-
we
You know
read
what?
through
I'm just
chapters.
wait. Can I just ask a question? How about we just do that?
Okay, go ahead.
Maybe.
Okay,
Or does Monique want to do stuff because she was waving her hand?
no, we need to
I'll
stop talking
ask
about
a
this.
question.
Yeah.
I was going to say this. So, like on pages 16 and 17, like Daisy has a little thing where she like speaks about life and like her reputation that she has to keep up. And I was going to say, how does this quote reflect her character as a whole? Well, so far that we see, like it starts
Ooh,
on
can I take up
16.
this?
It'll show you, huh?
Can I take this one on Daisy and like describe her character?
Wait, what
Yes.
quote are you guys talking about?
She means the
Yeah,
page
where is this?
17 with the
17.
Yep,
It starts
17,
where
that
it says
paragraph where
it'll show you how I've gotten to feel about things. And it goes on up until sophisticated God, I'm sophisticated on page 17, like halfway through the page. If that helps.
Got
anyone.
you.
no, Amanda was gonna talk. Amanda.
Alright.
So something that I noticed about Daisy, when Tom's in the room, she's a very happy, kind of go-lucky kind of person. But when Tom isn't in the room, that's when she kind of comes back down as like a kind of realist, and it's like we really see that on page 17. And like when she talks about how she wants her daughter to be what's it called?
Dumb and beautiful girl.
Yeah, it's on page 17 too, and it's like when she says, "I'm glad it's a girl, and I hope she'll be a fool. That's the best thing a girl can be in this world, a beautiful little fool." And it's like I think she like definitely says this because she knows that Tom is cheating on her. Like it's very obvious. Tom is, yeah, we can go on a rant on him later, but yeah, it's like once Tom's back in the room, she kind of drops her actual somber persona and puts on the mask of, hey, I'm a happy-go-lucky housewife. I'm happy with my life kind of thing. So it's like definitely attests to her character, and I really hope we see a lot more of her later on in the novel. So yay!
Yeah, I took the beautiful little fool thing, if that's what we're gonna talk about. I took that as if she was just beautiful and stupid, then the whole affair thing, she wouldn't even notice it. So when she's with Tom, she pretends that she doesn't notice it, and all she is just a beautiful little fool. Or you could expand that and have it be, if you're a beautiful fool, then you can excel in society, especially as a woman in that time period, without noticing any of the problems beneath the surface of like the roaring 20s and all of that.
Okay, so has that been thoroughly discussed? Can we move on to another question?
Ooh, I have one.
Okay.
So I was gonna ask, why would Fitzgerald make Nick the narrator? Because it seems like the story mainly focuses on Gatsby. So I was wondering why we don't focus on like Gatsby's point of view throughout the story, and we only see it through like Nick's. And Nick isn't really like he's not really like a major character in the story at all.
Well, can I go for this?
Yeah, go ahead.
Alright, let's go. Alright, so I think the reason it doesn't focus on Gatsby is because Gatsby's supposed to be this like big symbol on what everyone what everyone like thinks about the 20s. Like there's a lot of different interpretations of a person, like whether they're great or they're bad, like whether a person's actually moral or not, and like how you're always unsure of that person or something of that nature. That's why I don't think it focuses on Gatsby, and it focuses on Nick because he's more of an observer. That way we get more like of a point of view of all of the characters. Kind of we get to see through his eyes, characters interact with each other, how do they interact with him, and also through that it kind of shows us a parallel between, well, Nick can be a parallel actually between himself. Words.
Oh, are you trying? I don't know if this is what you're saying, but
Nick
I
is
was gonna
actually a
say that.
representation of the author. That's what I'm trying to do.
Oh, I was gonna say the audience, because Nick's just moving into West Egg and he doesn't know anything that's there other than like the little bit that he knows about Daisy, who's his cousin. But I was gonna say like the audience, he just kind of goes there and he doesn't know anything about Gatsby, because if it was from Gatsby's perspective, he wouldn't be this like enigma of a man. He would just be like, we would know about him. So, but being from Nick's perspective, we don't know anything.
I agree with that, and I also think it might be him as a representation, only because it's like you, Jesus Christ. If you also research the author, you can see that he kind of shares similarities with Nick, and then he also like sees the problems with the 1920s, and he is an observer, which possibly leads him to write the book in this point of view anyway. So that is my side of that.
Can I make an observation?
Yes.
I mean, we can't stop you.
Okay. Okay. So I want to like kind of like discuss like maybe like a point of view shift. So it's like think like just kind of imagine if Gatsby was the narrator, we'd have like a totally different spin on it because it's like the title is The Great Gatsby, and it's like if it was in Gatsby's point of view, we might not see him as great. Well, so far in the novel, it's like everyone talks about Gatsby in like such high regard, but it's like
I don't
think
even
about
really
it.
talk about him in high regard.
Yeah,
Well, I mean,
at one
everybody
point,
goes
some
to his-
people were like, he's a German spy.
Yeah, true, but it's like everybody goes to his parties because he supplies alcohol during Prohibition. Come on. Anyway,
He being great in like this big dude, like larger than life kind of.
yeah, that's what I mean.
Grandiose.
Like that's what I mean. That's like everybody like kind of holds him in that like, oh, he's such a larger than life guy. He has to have a great like kind of blah blah blah. But it's like if we were like really in Gatsby's point of view, we might not see that. But it's like we can't really be that sure as of now. But I do like the whole little theory of Fitzgerald words Nick being a representation of Fitzgerald. Okay.
Gatsby has sort of like this he's sort of like he has like not the naivety of a child, especially when he's talking to people. Like in chapter, I think it's 3.
Wait, do you think he's actually naive, or do you think that's just a face he puts on for those parties and for?
I think he's actually. I don't think he's naive, but he has like what's the word I'm looking for? Like
a facade.
Hopeful. No, not facade. He's like very hopeful and full of like. I guess hopeful is the word I'm looking for. He's very like hopeful and like,
Oblivious?
Not oblivious, but like I can't think of the word. He's like
Optimist.
Yeah, optimist. Thank you. He's very optimistic. And compared to like what's going around him, because in chapter 3 on page 48, one of the quotes says, "This is when Nick was talking about Gatsby. It was one of those rare smiles with the quality of eternal reassurance in it that you may come across 4 or 5 times in life. It faced or seemed to face the whole external world, and for an instant, and then concentrated on you with an irresistible presence in your favor. It understood you just as far as you want it to be understood, believed in you as you would like to be believed in yourself, and assured you that it had precisely the impression of you that at your best you hope to convey." Gatsby has this sort of effect on people that I think that's why people thought he was like he has the effect on people that most people wouldn't like others to have. I think that Gatsby appears to understand everyone and appears to understand everyone, and I don't think everyone appreciates that, especially during this time when men weren't treating women right and men weren't treating others right. Society wasn't being real open to what was it about, and then comes this man who seemingly could understand what everything's about and understand, and not he would make them feel bad about themselves.
So you could compare him to a godlike figure in that way.
Yeah. Ooh, that actually kind of makes sense.
Can I expand upon that?
Yeah, go ahead, please, Liz. But just warning, we're coming up on a 10-minute warning, so.
Alright, I'm gonna hurry up with it then. Basically what Nathan said, due to the fact that he's an enigma and he can understand everybody, but not everyone can understand him. You can go into the whole Christian thing where God knows everything about everyone and understands their situations, all that kind of stuff, but not everyone understands like how God is supposed to help or do things or does what he does. And also the fact that no one truly knows Gatsby in that way, since he's like so isolated. Even though he throws all these parties, like no one truly knows of him. You can consider him a godlike figure, since no one truly knows like who he is.
Speaking of God and godlike figures, I want to bring up something that happens in chapter 2. Are you? Put the Bible away.
We got
Ignore
we
it.
only got
Anyway.
10 minutes. Come on, we only got time for Bible jokes.
Yeah,
Let's
okay.
go.
So in chapter 2 on page 23, the billboard of Dr. T.J. Eckelberg is first brought up, and then he's mentioned once more on page 24 when Nick is under his persistent stare. So my question is, do these eyes have any significance? What could they symbolize? And do you think that they will have any significance later on in the novel?
Ooh. I got it.
How much it sucks having already read this book.
Yeah, it does. I feel like
Go ahead, Nathan.
Well, I always thought that those eyes were like the eyes of God, but it's not really like the eyes of God that we think of that's omniscient. I felt like because the eyes were in the Valley of Ash, and it seems like the idea of ash in your eyes, it like blinds you, and it even mentions the fact that your eyes were like faded away, like they were blind to what's going on, but still they were there. Much like how people during that time was like self-conscious. Yes.
at Nathan, I think the exact opposite thing of you. I think they were very open to seeing everything that happened. For example, they were across from where Myrtle lived, and Myrtle and Tom were having that affair, and it saw them. It sees things. Yes, it was across from them. That big old billboard.
No, I was gonna say like this was like
I feel like it is very clear because it's just there. It's not bias. It's just these eyes are just watching the characters and judging them for what they do.
Yeah, but could it be like saying how even though humanity tried, because this is like it was because the ash of coal, could it be said, could Fitzgerald be saying even though humanity is trying to move away from like God using technology and science, and he's still ever present and still able to see through and judge us despite what we may try to put on a facade of humanity?
Okay.
So wait, are you like?
Alright.
Are you saying these eyes are the eyes of God?
Yeah,
Is that
in the sense that they are judging everything that humanity is doing, even though we try to sort of usurp him through technology, because this is like right after or during the Industrial Revolution, right?
It was right after World War I, 1920s.
Yeah, this is like this is well after the Industrial Revolution.
Hey.
I see
Okay.
Moniqua's hand up.
Monique?
But Jacob hasn't really talked
Oh, hey,
much.
Titus, what do you want to say?
Okay.
Titus said nothing, Monique. Well, please, Titus, enlighten
Okay.
us.
So, Nathan, I'm gonna have to disagree with you, which I think means I agree with Lauren, which is probably what I'm supposed to do. You know, I don't see them as the eyes of God. I just kind of see them. Oh my gosh, Mike's playing PUBG.
Yeah, we know. I see it on my computer too. going.
You know, I think it's like I don't know how to word this. Like they're not the eyes of God, but they're more meant to like symbolize what they did wrong. Like they're meant
So
to
it
be like, hey,
symbolizes society's judgment
Yeah.
on their actions?
I think it's more like society is like, you freaking suck. And then, you know, you have like God, shut up, Mike. And you have like God being like, you know, God's the Gatsby, but Gatsby doesn't have eyes everywhere. He isn't God, literally, in that sense. You know.
Okay.
I see what you're saying, but I still think they're the eyes of God. But I'm gonna let Monique talk now.
I think
He
Titus stole what Monique was going to say.
butchered it at the same time. I don't know how that is possible, but
Hey,
I was
class.
basically.
Oh, you weren't
Oh.
done. Sorry.
I'm
Continue.
sorry. I was basically gonna say those eyes were society, and that like everyone is constantly watching everyone and judging each other to the point where people are doing what they think society thinks is right, not necessarily what they think is right, which tips into the moral balance of the like moral balance. Like, are they actually doing what is right, or are they doing what society thinks is right? And it questions a person's morality and what they're doing.
5-minute warning.
Uh,
Hi, Amanda, go.
Okay, so I want to bring up something in chapter 3. So on page 59,
Oh,
Nick
wait,
states.
hold on. Wait, are you bringing up a different question? Because my
Yes,
question's
but
kind
this,
of related to the TJ
this also
Huckleberg
kind
thing.
of relates to the whole moral judgment stuff.
Oh, okay.
Do you want to do yours first?
Oh, sure.
Go ahead.
Right before the TJ Huckleberg thing, it's like right under there, they talked about the good old Valley of Ashes. Apparently that wasn't just a fake place, that was a real place, and it was in Queens, which was where around this book was, and it was a place where people burned garbage in the 20s, and they put all the burned ashes in a big old pile. And at first everyone was like, ooh, there's no garbage, and then they realized they made everything smell like garbage, and everyone hated it. And I was just wondering how that, like Fitzgerald's view of society, do you think that whole, including the Valley of Ashes, how do you think that relates to his view of society?
he's saying all humans are garbage.
That's actually exactly what I was
That's
about to say.
actually like it.
Like that was like a less scholarly version of like.
Well,
what
I
was about
mean,
to say.
if we think of Nick as a reflection of Fitzgerald, and Nick is a like kind of a pessimist, then I could definitely see Fitzgerald having the opinion of humans are garbage, and it's their fault that things are the way they are.
I think that's like foreshadowing towards the fact that Nick may be a pessimist, but he seems like naive to like the ways of a city. He's a country boy. He doesn't really know like how everything operates in the city. I feel like that it's foreshadowing to the fact that he learns the true nature of like the city and how city folk act and how rich people act, and him being either disgusted and repugnant. No,
Repulse.
thank you. Repulsed at their actions.
Do you think the ashes represent all of the bad actions of all the rich people?
Actually,
Because
yes.
that's what I thought.
Oh yeah, because when was
you
this
were
actually like written? Like because
This was written in the 1920s, and a lot of the people who put all the garbage there were the rich people, because they didn't care about it, because it's right where all the poor people lived.
Which sucks.
Yeah, it sucked for the poor people, but not for the rich
Hey,
ones.
can I bring up my thing now?
Yeah,
'Cause it's
Amanda,
a really
go.
good topic. Okay, so on page 59, Nick states, I'm one of the few honest people that I have ever known. So for what reason do you think that Nick would say this? Why is it that people value honesty so much, and how could this connect to the text later on? So I have a theory on it. So out of like a lot of the city people that Nick has met so far, they have some sort of dishonesty about them. For example, Daisy has the happy facade that she puts up around Tom. Tom is cheating on Daisy, which is kind of immoral in a standpoint of marriage. He finds out that Jordan's kind of a white liar. So it's like, it kind of paints that perception of city people are dishonest, which makes Nick to be one of the only honest people that he knows. So like that might skew his perception on city life and his perception on society itself. And I wanted to know if anyone had other thoughts on that.
We should bring this up later because I could really go, Nick. I'm talking to myself.
Go, there's only 1 minute left. Come on, do this.
Okay, it can go a little bit over. Guys, it could go a little over.
Okay.
Freaking out.
I was trying to basically say that, like, with this, like, who says he won't possibly, like, I'm just making theories here and jumping, but I'm saying, like, who says he won't be corrupted later by society and that he won't even be able to trust himself, that he says he's one of the most honest people that he knows. He might not be able to even trust himself anymore, so he might not even be an honest person by the end.
Titus looks happy. What do you have something? Do you have something to say, Titus?
No, it was more of a reaction to her.
This could connect to like Tale of Two Cities kind of stuff, because everybody would say, "Hey, I'm honest. Hey, I'm honest," when everybody was a freaking liar basically there, and
or if we go with the thing with
it.
He's a representation of Fitzgerald, then Fitzgerald views himself as like the non-corrupt narrator of the story about like dishonest people. Yeah.
But this could go into the question of, if you're in a corrupt society but you're not corrupt, how long will it take before you are?
Ooh.
Ooh.
Can't wait to see this.
I'm done. All right, leave it. I'm sorry.
Wait, you ready for this, Bartello? Hey Google, make me a sandwich.
I must warn you, it's not a reversible spell, but I'll try. You're a sandwich.
Cut the stream off right now, please.
My ending. My ending are
It's my
really.
suffering.